This is such boxing politics. The reason get rid of that. The reason all these people want it to go ahead is because the money involved. And now everyone is going to probably lose millions and millions of dollars because you don't just have Clomid floating around in your system. So I'm in the board a-hole here. Thank you very much for joining me as always. And this will be quite a fast turnaround video, so I just want to get it up there. Actually, I had another video planned for today. I'll put it live tomorrow or later this evening maybe. But basically, this is the deal. I like boxing and I'm interested in bodybuilding, and therefore you do start researching drugs. This is where these two things do kind of come together. And I don't know how big the Chris Eubank, Nigel Benn fights are outside of the United Kingdom. I'm going to imagine they must be quite big. Anyway, there was some seriously popular and intense fights that happened 20 or 30 years or so ago. And this weekend, we were meant to be having Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn, obviously the sons of each of the fighters. And I think that Conor Benn is a welterweight and Chris Eubank is like a middleweight, superweight. But the point, middleweight, I should say, middleweight, super middleweight. But the point is that, you know, Chris Eubank Jr. was going to have to come down a lot and Conor Benn was going to have to go up a lot. So straight away, there was controversy. I think Chris Eubank, the dad, even came out and said, look, we shouldn't be doing this. Why are we mucking around with weight classes? It could get serious. And a lot of people have even said or speculated they thought Chris Eubank Jr. may turn up at the weekend for the weigh-in and just be overweight. And then all the promoters and everybody else have to get together and say, well, are we going to fight at whatever? We don't know, right? People actually thought that may have happened. Instead, what has happened today on the Wednesday, no idea what the date is that Conor Benn has had now this is where it gets complicated. Drug testing in boxing is very complicated. A voluntary sample that he has given has coming back and it is tested positive for clomiphene, which you may know as Clomid. We're going to talk about it in just 1 second. Now, that doesn't actually count as a positive test in boxing because you have a B sample. Now, we can test the B sample, but that's going to take a few more weeks. So, just as I was about to not do this video, because all of the promoters came out and said, you know what, don't worry about it, we don't care. We understand that it's that clomiphene can sort of increase your testosterone levels, but it's not a performance-enhancing drug, so we're not going to worry about it. The British Boxing Board came out and said, no, we are no longer going to sanction this fight for many, many reasons. The number one thing being, if Conor Benn sparks Chris Eubank Jr. out and, you know, heaven forbid something terribly happens to him, like he could even die. It's happened in Chris Eubank's own career. How the hell do you ever justify that? You can't. So they've come out and said it's not going to happen. So as of me saying these words, I'm sure it's going to change 1,000 times. It will not be taking place at the weekend. But the thing that really got me and the thing I wanted to talk about was I think the interview was with Chris Eubank Jr.'s trainers, one of his trainers. They were doing it with TalkSport or someone like that. And they said, look, we've looked at the drug samples, and while he has got, they're trace amounts, to be fair, while he does have trace amounts of clomiphene, I'm just going to call it Clomid from now on because I can't pronounce it, in his system, again, we don't think it's a PED. We understand that it can have an effect on testosterone, but we're happy to go ahead. This is such boxing politics. The reason get rid of that. The reason all these people want it to go ahead is because the money involved. And now everyone is going to probably lose millions and millions of dollars because you don't just have Clomid floating around in your system unless you're a woman that's probably going through the menopause or other hormonal problems. The reason it does mean it probably ties into PEDs is because you take Clomid, usually 9 times out of 10, it's changed a lot nowadays, but again, it's not my bag, so I can't talk about it sort of too educationally. But you take Clomid after you've shut your own endocrine system down as a man from doing, well, it could be lots of things. It could be testosterone, it could be tren, I don't know, there's 1,000 things. You know the deal, right? You can shut yourself down because what happens if you don't know is that when you introduce testosterone into your system, what your brain says to you is, well, I'm going to stop producing testosterone in the testes because I can tell not only do I have enough, but I probably have a surplus. So I'm not going to waste a bunch of energy making more. So you turn it off. That's why when people come off testosterone, you feel worse because you have zero testosterone in you as soon as the external testosterone has worn off. And that's when you take drugs like Clomid, clomiphene, and what it will do is it will try and restart the testicles. I can't remember, it's like luteinizing hormone, and the other one's FSH, but I can't pronounce it. These are basically two things that work in your testicles in order for you to produce testosterone, and that's what drugs like Clomipid will do. They will try and get you rocking and rolling again, so you're not walking around with no testosterone in you, which is not only going to be terrible, but any gains you may have got from your cycle are absolutely going to be flushed down the toilet. So the only real reason I can fathom, if he is allegedly, we've got to use the word allegedly a lot, allegedly, if he has allegedly tested positive for this, then I cannot figure out another reason why he would have it in his system other than the fact he decided to do a cycle and thought, well, if I do it here and I end it here, I know the drug testing will probably be here, although I'm pretty sure it's random in boxing, I'll be able to get away with it, right? It's happened loads. John Jones in the UFC was a right stickler for this. They kept finding clomiphene in his system to the point I think USADA went, oh, now you have to be above a certain percentage. It's like, why does he have a female hormone drug in him to begin with? And it could be a complete fluke. It could have come in a tainted supplement, but sometimes there's no smoke without fire. I do believe it happened to Brock Lesnar in UFC as well. This is when he was doing the WWE stuff and the UFC stuff. Who the hell was he fighting then? I can't remember. I think it was that Australian guy. But WWE came out and said, well, we don't care that he tested positive for that because he's not a full-time member of the WWE roster, and therefore he is not... he's not eligible for our drug testing system, which is absolutely crazy, where, of course, boxing was like, well, this is terrible, and something happened there, but I can't remember why. But that's the other reason the British Boxing Council is not allowed to sanction this thing, because it was kind of dodgy anyway with the different weight limits. Like, why have weight limits if we're just allowed to muck around with it? Go, oh, now you can be 205 pounds. Who the hell cares? But if there could be drug use involved and the B sample does come back and it proves that he may have potentially done something, again, it's all circumstantial evidence. I was going to say you could ruin the whole sport, but boxing is ruined anyway. Look at all the Tyson Fury AJ stuff. It's an absolute joke. But it does go to show that this stuff is going on everywhere. The idea of doping in sports is nothing new. Now, the big scandal that came out a few years ago was obviously the Lance Armstrong and the cycling stuff. You actually read into that, all the cyclists were doing it, and Lance Armstrong was just the poster boy. Doesn't mean I agree with it, but it was rife. And I think you have to be quite naive to think it's not happening elsewhere, be it the Olympics, be it in the NFL, baseball, the Premier League over here. I find it nuts. Like, other sports will have random positive tests for athletes who then get suspended. You never get one in the Premier League, none. And make sure you check out the More Plates, More Dates video he did on the Liverpool football team, where something crazy like 65% of the entire squad suffer from asthma and therefore are allowed to use specific drugs that are going to help their cardio. Now, holding your hands up, it probably stands to reason that all of them do actually need this drug, and they're doing it to enhance their performance. Because that's the other thing. Do not forget that PEDs don't just mean steroids or stuff that you're injecting into you that have a direct effect on your endocrine system. It can be a bunch of other stuff. I mean, Zac Efron came out when he was talking about his Baywatch movie, and he said to get that ripped, to get that lean, he was using diuretics to piss all of his water out. I mean, it's not a performance-enhancing drug because he wasn't competing, but he wanted to give the best performance he could in the movie, and to determine that, he thought he had to have this ripped physique. So you can kind of tie it in. It's the same thing. Now, I don't know the specific rules for all of the sports, but I'm going to imagine you can't just smash diuretics and not worry about it. So it's a rife problem, and it always makes me laugh when people kind of point their finger at bodybuilding. Oh, you're on all this stuff. Now, they are on tremendous amount of gear, obviously, but I think this problem actually runs a lot further. Like, I bet there's a lot of people watching this video right now who don't actually like steroid freaks, and have either, one, been offered steroids or drugs, whatever, PEDs in their gyms and accepted it, or two, they didn't accept it, but they still been offered it. Now, I think I'm quite lucky I wasn't going to these kind of gyms when I was a kid, because I can imagine when I was more impressionable, I may have walked down that path, and I don't think it's a particularly good path to go down. Again, you're going to do whatever the hell you want to do, just please be safe. That's the main thing. You don't want to look big in a box. But it's almost presented in these kind of environments as if it's normal. Oh, you want to look like that guy, you've got to do this. And you want to look like that guy, you've got to do that. I was talking to someone the other day who thought Anavar was just something you can buy over a counter. Now, if you go on any kind of forum, Anavar will be pitched to you as, well, you know, it's just Anavar. It's like a really weak anabolic, which is true in comparison, but you still don't know how it's going to affect you. And it still could, you know, really, really screw you up. Because again, people will say, oh, you should take Anavar because it doesn't convert to estrogen. That's what testosterone does. That's probably the number one side effect. If you take too much testosterone and you're not controlling your estrogen levels, your estrogen is going to go up, and then, my gosh, you're going to be bloated, you can get the dreaded gynecomastia and all of these other things. But at the same time, while this is a bit hocus pocus science, so if you do take enough Anavar or oxandrolone or whatever the hell the actual chemical name is called, to the point your body shuts down and stops making testosterone, there are studies out there that suggest that can happen, then what's going to happen is you're going to stop taking the Anavar. You're not going to have any testosterone in your body. Your body's absolutely going to freak out because there's no idea what's going on. You're not doing a PCT because, again, the forums are told you don't have to, and you may have a surplus of estrogen, and then you're going to suffer from all those effects anyway. So while it wasn't directly converting to estrogen, you may still have estrogen-related problems. You just don't know. And this is another reason I wanted to make this video, is that do not just read a bunch of stuff online and then decide, oh, well, I know totally what's going to happen now. No, you don't. You have one anecdotal piece of evidence, and that doesn't pertain to you at all. all. So always just be careful with this stuff. And also just hold your hands up in the air and realize it's going on everywhere. Like, this is probably the biggest fight Conor Benn could ever have in his life, given the rivalry between their dads and the amount of money it was going to generate. And I can only imagine, he thought to himself, wow, imagine I win. Imagine I knock out the bigger Chris Eubank Jr. and also sort of avenge what happened to my father. I'm going to be a bigger star. I'm going to make more money. I can put more food on the table for my family. All this, endorsement deals. And he probably got blinded by that. And now he may have tarnished his entire career, allegedly, because 100% we don't know what's going on, and allegedly because we don't know why he was, why he had this in the system to begin with. It could be one of 1,000 things. So just something I wanted to rant and rave about. On a purely selfish and personal level, I'm disappointed because I wanted to see it. I'm always a bit umming and ahhing when it comes to the boxing weight classes, because I'm like, is this a good idea? I'm not 100% sure, but I still buy in. So I suppose I'm part of the problem. But there you go. Over the next few days, I'm sure even more information will keep coming out, but use this and always stay safe. And always stay smart. Now, please do leave a comment below and let me know what you think about all of it as well. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Hit the bell, ding, ding. So not videos are going live. There will be a video on the screen. Please do give it a click. Otherwise, grillermind.com/Simon. Use code Simon, get 10% off at Simon316 on Instagram and Twitter. Patreon.com/Simon316. Simon@BigGarDell.com for merch. New merch stuff coming soon. Keep an eye on this space. Shout out off you want on Cameo. And that's it. Take care of yourself. Don't know what that was. Goodbye.